Hello and welcome to our first episode of 2023. This is a From the Command Post. We're live here from the Command Lab at the PSTA to bring you guys our first episode of 2023. So as always, make sure if you're a CCO and you need credit for COPDI that you sign in the comments and you put your last name and your fire service ID to ensure you are getting credit. And at the end, make sure you sign out. And before we get started, there's a couple of things we wanted to talk about to you guys as far as what we're doing differently in the 2023 COPDI season. So to start, we want to talk about, as you guys may have read last night on an email sent from me, we are now tracking COPDI hours a little bit differently. As you can see on your screen there, we are now broadcasting the training hours, the COPDI training hours at the Training Academy website. And you can find that under quick links, right? Under the HR division. You can go over to the Training Academy, CCO COPDI hours tracker. And once you go to the website, you'll be able to go to command competencies and see that there. So if you have any questions or any additional comments about that, you can always email me directly and we will try to answer your questions. So today we're talking about the plane crash that just took place right down the street here in Gaithersburg. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our moderator, today being Division Chief Gary Cooper, and we'll get started.
Thanks. Hi, I think we have a lot to talk about, or a lot that we can talk about today, so we're going to get right with it. I'll start with the introductions, and then I'll pass the microphone to who was the incident commander at the event. I do want to mention that, and I think Dan will probably hit this a little bit harder, who you see here today is not the entire command team. A lot of people came together and worked pretty hard for a successful end to this event, and we were only to be able to get this group here today. So I have Ivan Browning on the other side of the table, currently assigned as one of the Special Operations Battalion Chiefs, Hazmat Battalion, and Assistant Chief Dan Ogren, currently assigned as the Section Chief of EMIHS, and Dan was working overtime as the Duty Chief the date of this event and was the incident commander. So with that said, I want to start with a couple questions, just to get the ball rolling on this, and then we'll just let this thing progress organically. So talk to me about, this was, if I remember, it was like 4:30, 5:30 in the afternoon it got dispatched?
Right, yeah, so the call itself was dispatched around, I think, 5:34 was the official dispatch time, somewhere in there.
PM.
PM.
Where were you?
So, slight correction, I was Battalion 5 for that shift. It was Chief Barry Reed's last full shift as the duty chief.
That's right.
So I was up in the Battalion 5 office. It had been just a really quiet day. And not a very nice day out. It had been rainy, misty, cloudy all day, pretty cool. High was about 50 that day. I don't think we'd had one full assignment the whole day, so it just been kind of going about a Sunday. It was a holiday weekend, end of Thanksgiving weekend, and so we were just kind of getting ready to eat dinner at the firehouse when all this started.
So were you in the office? Were you in the kitchen?
So I was in the office. They had actually called for dinner, and I was getting ready to go in for dinner, and I looked up at the CAD screen in the office.
Answer my question before I asked it.
And I started seeing small plane crash, small plane crash, small plane crash. And I'm like, what's going on? And because there are multiple. And I'm like, I was a little confused. So I started to hear action from out in the kitchen, chairs moving, people walking out towards the engine room. So I'm like, okay, maybe this is legitimate. So I started to walk out towards the vehicle. I decided I would kind of head towards that area. It sits right on the line kind of between Battalion 5 and Battalion 3, but I figured it was a Battalion 5 call, so I just headed that way and had just gotten the vehicle and turned it on and pulled out on the apron when they dispatched it.
Okay. And so when they dispatched it, were you at a point where you could pay attention? Did you hear the dispatch?
Yes, I heard the dispatch.
Okay. And did you open up the event on the MDC to see any remarks or anything before you took
No, I was already moving,
Okay.
so I did not open it up. And having worked in Gaithersburg 30 years ago, I had kind of an idea where they were sending us. Unfortunately, that was wrong.
So what was your immediate reaction when you got in the car? The dispatch obviously validated what you saw on the screen, and you start aiming on what you think is the right direction. What starts going through your head?
So a lot of things start going through my head. I'm looking outside. It's dark. It's rainy. It's misty. I'm kind of wondering why there's even a plane in the air right now. And then there was chatter on the radio about different possible locations. It was initially dispatched in the area of Montgomery Village and Shadow Oak Drive, at the back of the village, near where the old golf course used to be. And so as I'm heading in that direction, I'm hearing stuff about, we don't see anything, we think it might be here, it could be anywhere between there and the airport, so we're trying to figure it out. And then I'm just trying to go through my mind, okay, what will I do when I get there? You know, how will I set this up? And but it was kind of hard because I've been on plane crashes before, but this one didn't have a whole lot of information.
Right.
Bystander sees a plane, you know, flying low and may have crashed. Those kinds of comments were coming through.
So just to paint the picture for those that aren't familiar with the area, whose station area is that closest to?
I would think it's an 8-box,
Okay.
but it's really, 28's pushing them in there.
17.
Okay, just to
17,
give those
yeah.
that haven't worked on this side of the
It's
county.
not too far from the training academy,
Yeah.
where we are right now.
Okay, so you're going down the road. Did you get any? Well, should we play the dispatch?
Yeah, we can go ahead and play the dispatch.
You guys
and
play
hear
the
what we got.
dispatch. While they're looking for it, was there any valuable updates coming from the tactical channel operator while you were en route, or no? Don't get into the on-scene stuff yet.
The area of Shannon Loop Drive and Montgomery Village Avenue. The area of Shannon Loop Drive and Montgomery Village Avenue. Small aircraft crash. Ambulance 734, ambulance 708 Bravo. Paramedic Tower 708, truck 734. Rest squad 717, paramedic engine 734. Hazmat 728. Support unit 725, battalion 705. Operate 7 Alpha 4. Box Bear 828, 1734.
So yeah, so that dispatch leaves a lot to them. I'm sure they gave you everything they had, right? It was one of those passing by caller, saw a plane flying low, right? So
Right.
that leaves a lot to the imagination. Did you get any valuable? I don't know if they heard me say this. Did you get any valuable updates from anybody en route? I don't want to hear about the on-scene thing yet.
So, no, not initially, because there was a lot of bidding on the call. There was a lot of talking back and forth, people responding. There was a little bit of chatter about possible locations, but I'm more focused on getting where I need to get to the first time, and then figuring we're going to have to stop and explore. Fortunately, that wasn't the case.
So if I remember correctly, paramedic engine 708 got there first?
Correct. Paramedic engine 708, who actually initially wasn't dispatch. They didn't realize it till they got there, but paramedic engine 708 shows up on the scene first.
Okay, so from the time of dispatch to the time of Captain Gardner, right?
Yes.
Captain Gardner's on-scene report. Give me two things. Give me how long that was and how long it felt like.
It felt like forever. Felt like I was driving forever. It was probably 5 to 7 minutes, I would guess, at least.
Do we have that audio? The first on-scene report? Do we have that?
Yes.
Can you play that now?
I think it's in 708 Montgomery. Give me the radio for a minute. I'm on the scene with the police. It's going to be on Goshen at Rossbury, adjacent to the South Center. I do have a small aircraft at least 100 feet in the air in the tower. I'll have the initial command.
Command. The pilot is on the phone with us. There's 2 people in the plane. Nobody's injured. You can't get out.
All right, I believe that. I'll have the initial command. Goshen Road's going to be shut down. And I'll get back with you with more in a second.
Okay, paramedic is in 708 with command.
Okay, so
1739.
so hearing his on-scene report and then the radio operator's report of we're talking to him on the phone, everything changes at that point, right? It just got real, just got
Yes.
validated, and what do you do with that?
right? So it gave me a couple things, right? It gave me a new location, which, if you're familiar with that area, I think they're showing a picture of the tower on Goshen Road right now, but if you're familiar with that area, it's probably 1.5 miles, 2 miles from where the initial dispatch was. If you cut through the neighborhood and come through the backside on Rothbury Drive to Goshen. So first, I had to navigate to the area. So I kind of had an idea where it was, and fortunately, I was able to zip right through there. But it gave me another thing, too. We now have the location, but we also now know that we have people alive in the plane, which was a big deal. Most of the crashes I've been on have either been really, really, really minor and nothing to them, or a very similar, or one that happened maybe a mile from this, where there were no survivors. So we have what sounded to me like a plane intact, as they can see from the picture right now, hanging from a high-tension power line with 2 souls on board. Initially, they're reporting no injuries. That ended up not being the case, but that was the initial thing. So that is kind of a weight off my mind as I'm going in. And then I'm just kind of trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to tackle this once I get there?
Right. So the IRP addresses a plane crash, or what we would consider a normal plane crash. What does the IRP tell you about a plane that hit wires and didn't blow up and then crashed into a high tension line and stayed there? What does the IRP tell you about that?
Yeah, not a lot. There's
All
a
right.
few things. And it comes back to basic objectives
There
and
you go.
size up.
So that being said, I think I've opened it up for you to start. I'd like for you to start telling us what you did. What was your planning? What was your headspace like? What did you do first? What were your priorities? Obviously, they didn't change, but start laying out what you did stepwise until you got some help. And then once your help got there, what did you do from there? And I'll keep interrupting you, asking you questions, and we'll just roll with it. How's that
Sure.
sound?
So once I actually arrived on scene at Goshen Road in Rothbury, when I turned the corner, it was a little bit shocking. I mean, I've been doing this in some shape or form for over 35 years, and I've never seen anything like it before. Literally have a plane hanging off the edge of a tower. And it was hard exactly to tell how tall. It ended up that Captain Gardner's estimate was pretty accurate.
It's going to be on Goshen
Hold on a sec.
at Rothbury.
Is that transmitting over him? Go ahead.
So sorry. But the first initial thing is trying to get the lay of the land, right? So I pull up, I see this tower. I'm trying to judge distances because I can't get too close because we have major electric right away with multiple power lines down. We don't know the extent of the damage to the power infrastructure, but we know that there's wires down. It ends up that in flight, the plane hit the north string of wires and then embedded in the south tower. So we had a relatively large footprint that we deemed to be initially unsafe. So
From where to where?
So when I got there, I established, the initial hot zone I established was from the rear of Aerial Tower 8. If you look at the picture, Aerial Tower 8 would have been parked on Goshen Road just below or south of the tower with the plane in it. So clear of the electrical lines, but on the southbound side of the incident. I was parked on the northbound side, or the upper part of the thing, adjacent to the shopping center there, which is off to the left. And I basically made everything in between the initial hot zone. I wanted everybody back.
Okay. I had another thought. As far as you getting ready to start your steps, one thing you couldn't help but notice was Captain Gardner's very calm radio transmission.
Absolutely.
Which I believe helped set the tone for the event, right?
Absolutely.
Did you even notice that? Did it help you? Did it prevent you from getting anxious, nervous, excited, want to work faster? Let's talk about the tone of the first 2 engine officer arriving on the scene, right?
No, absolutely. When he arrived and he gave that first initial on-scene report and he was calm, it kind of puts you a little bit at ease. when I turned the corner and actually looked up at the plane, there was a little bit of angst. Like I said, I'd never seen anything like it, and just kind of, questions going through my mind, like, okay, how on earth are we going to get these people down, right? Because as we'll talk about in a little bit, there's multiple challenges that factor into this. It's not as simple as it looks or could be. So, but that initial comm was great. It also allowed for clear radio communication. So, I mean, he gave a good honest report. I had an idea of what I had. We had a tower 50 yards back off the road. Now, I didn't know the terrain in and around the tower, but I knew it was off the road. I knew that they were up 100 to 150 feet in the tower. So that gave me some parameters to work with right there. I knew that there was 2 souls alive on the airplane. So that was good. And I had an idea at that point what some of the general resources we were going to need initially to tackle that. And actually, before I could even ask for them, they had already started them. Hazmat was started on the initial response, and then technical rescue team was started based off of the initial on-scene report. So before I even got there and assumed command, we had those 2 specialties were already en route. So that was kind of a load off my mind. I know I have help coming, right? I have the experts coming.
So what was the first thing you did? What was the first action you took?
Well, after I set up the initial exclusion zone, I had a face-to-face talk with Captain Gardner at the command post. He walked over. We talked about what we had, about the issues we had initially. I don't remember if it was in that conversation or a later transmission he made, but basically he allowed us out. There was no way we were getting fire apparatus up to the tower. Not that we would have initially, but that wasn't going to be an option. And even if we could, we wouldn't have the reach on any of our apparatus to even get close to these people. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's just start to break this down into its parts, right? Break out the ICS book. We'll break it down into its parts, and I started to divide the incident up. So almost immediately, I assigned groups to this incident. I moved Hazmat into their own group so they could focus on issues with the plane. They could focus on figuring out what we had with fuel, et cetera, those kinds of things. And then I had TRT off to the side as well. They were on their own group, and I actually put each of them on their own operational channel. I stepped back, and one of the few things I mentioned earlier you can get from this policy, which is kind of like our general objectives. In the policy, it uses acre. I simplified it a little bit, right? And I decided that I had 3 primary objectives when I arrived there, okay? I wanted to access the scene and the wreckage. That was going to be an objective. I wanted to control the hazards, right? Whether it was the electrical hazards, the fuel hazards, the hazard from falling, either the plane falling or debris falling. And then we're going to worry about rescuing and treating the victims. So those were kind of my operational guidelines moving forward. And then from there, I went through and just started to break everything down into its components. We have a hazmat group. We have the technical rescue group. As soon as they arrived on the scene, I called the leader, who initially was Lieutenant Land.
Technical rescue.
Technical rescue. And basically told him what we had and that he should start developing some contingency plans for how we're going to get these people down. I wasn't 100% convinced at that point that we're going to be able to reach them with our equipment or even equipment we're able to obtain from another source. So I need a plan for if we can actually get to them via crane or anything like that. But I also need a plan as a backup plan. What are we going to do if we can't get to them via crane? Because we have this plane who's 100, 150 feet in the air, precarious, and I don't know if it's energized, if it's not energized, how stable it is, will it last there, is it going to fall out, It was a windy night with gusts over 25 miles per hour. I'm worried about, is the plane just going to slip out and fall? So all these things are going through my mind. So I basically put that particular planning off on them. I took my fire department suppression pieces, and I put them into a fire suppression group and had them develop a plan for combating any incident that might happen if this were to spark off and catch fire. The reports I was getting from the scene were that there was a smell of fuel in the air, so we felt that we had a fuel leak of some kind, but that they couldn't see from binoculars and everything. They couldn't see any pooling fuel or fuel on the ground. So I was concerned, what happens if it ignites in the air and we have a flowing Class B fire? What happens if the plane falls, it explodes? So developing those contingency plans for worst case scenarios was their job. And then, of course, I set up an EMS group that was going to be tasked with preparing for taking care of these patients, who we end up finding out were actually pretty injured. So,
All right, I'm gonna jump in. As you were speaking, I was writing down a bunch of questions. You answered a few of them organically. So they're not in any, they're in the order of which you introduced the topic. So the 911 caller, in the spirit of time, I know, or most of us know, but we'll reiterate it for this, that one of the members of your command team was on the phone with the pilot or the pastor, one of the two. One of the two
it changed
souls.
over the course of the
Okay, the entire time. So how was that initiated and at what point?
Okay, so shortly after we got there, we got a transmission from the communications center that said they were on the phone with, at that point, it was the pilot, and that he was telling them that they did not feel safe in the plane and that they were going to try and climb out of the plane. At which point, we advised them, say, no, please tell them to stay in the plane. They're much safer in the plane. I realize they don't feel safe, but we can't put them out on these high tension lines. Like I said, we don't know the status of the power, and we're talking about lines that are carrying in excess of 230,000 volts.
They'll kill you if you look at them.
They'll kill you if you look at them, and not only do you have to, you don't even have to touch them.
Yeah.
If you get close, it'll jump out and touch you. And we're talking about a situation where even the static electricity, even if the power is off and the static electricity builds up in those lines from the wind blowing and stuff like that, that static electricity discharge is enough to kill somebody. So we said, you're in a safe place right now, as safe as it can be, stay there. They kept calling back. So at that point in the car with me, I had myself, Chief Goldstein had arrived shortly after the incident began, Chief Tom Baker from Laytonsville, and Chief Bonita from Sandy Spring had all arrived.
So since you brought it up, how long did it take to get those members in the car?
Chief Goldstein was there probably within 2 or 3 minutes of me arriving. Because that's what it felt like. It was pretty quick. The other two, probably 10 minutes.
Okay, so timely, right?
Timely.
You had a team in
Yep.
a good amount of time.
Yeah, timely.
Okay.
And so at that point, what we decided the communication with these people was important, right? At that point, we knew that this was going to be a relatively long incident. This is not going to end soon. And these people are up there. We're not 100% sure of their situation, but they're not calm. They're concerned, right? As you would be too. So
I would be frantic.
yeah, I would be too.
Yeah.
So
Hey, give them credit where credit's due.
Exactly.
Everything I heard, they were calm.
So what we made the decision at that point was, hey, take communications center out of it, and we assigned Chief Baker from Laytonsville to be our conduit to the airplane. And so we passed him a Sonim phone and said, this is the number, call, talk to the occupants of the plane. And we maintained that throughout the incident.
Were they on the phone with somebody at ECC when you made that decision? Like, did someone tell them, hey, your phone's going to ring, answer it, it's going to be us?
I believe so.
Okay, simple detail, just
Yeah.
detail.
So, and the other issue we had was there was 2 people in the plane. Both of them had phones. One had dropped it in the back of the plane and couldn't get to it. The other one had a phone, but the battery was less than half.
Of course.
And we were concerned about it dying on us. So what we did is we just maintained a regular contact schedule. about every 10 to 15 minutes throughout the incident, we were talking to him, giving updates. Hey, I know it doesn't seem like we're doing anything, but all this stuff is going on. And we would go through and talk to him over the time. And like I said, during the incident, the person we talked to changed. At some point, we were talking to the pilot. At some point, we were talking to the passenger. They started describing their condition as worsening. We would talk to the pilot. He would say the passenger's unconscious. We would talk to the passenger later and say the pilot's going unconscious and that there's blood everywhere in the cockpit and all this other stuff. So it changed throughout, and the picture of their status changed throughout, which was a concern because we have people who are unable to treat themselves. We can't treat them, and we don't know how bad their injuries are. And I truly was worried that we're 5 hours into this incident, that we're not going to get there in time.
Oh, and by the way, we don't know if the plane's secure or not still, right? All right, so you briefly alluded to the fact of binoculars, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, great move by the first responders, right? At what point did we actually put personnel into the hot zone to be able to look up, to do whatever you did, right? Way before you got the Bronco lift there and whatnot. At what point were there people close to the incident, in the danger zone?
So I would have to defer to Chief Browning, but I don't know how far into the incident they went off of the road before the Bronco lift got there.
So to answer that question, I think people had started operating around the tower prior to my arrival.
Was that part of the plan?
I can't account for
Okay.
prior to me.
And we're not going to assume anything.
But I know people were staged back, but there was some police foot traffic when I pulled up. There was some
Right.
HEPCO folks that were.
We had a
obviously
lot of
ahead
trouble securing the scene with bystanders. And then we'll talk about this later, but we had so many agencies on the scene of this incident.
Sure.
That control over them became difficult too, and trying to keep them from wandering different places.
All right, I'm going to keep going down my list. So at the beginning, when you first started talking, you mentioned that you had to develop what your priorities were. And then you did I wrote down, okay, what are your objectives going to be? And I thought you did a really good job identifying what the issues were, identifying who you believed were going to either work or prepare to work on those issues. And you did a really good job defining what their objectives were, right? Breaking that thing down is pretty impressive. Sure.
So, was there ever a thought from whether Chief Baker or from your command staff on like FaceTiming the passengers in the airplane, or getting some kind of video from them inside the plane?
I never thought about that. I don't know whether Chief Baker thought about that. I don't know whether it was given using the sonom phones. I don't even know if that's technically possible with the people up there. It actually probably would have helped us. I did not think of that.
All right, so you mentioned reports of an odor of fuel. That was just from personnel on the scene doing whatever it was they were assigned to do. They just caught whiffs of the fuel. Is that what you're, okay. All right, so at that point, you've answered the questions that I've asked since you started talking. I'm going to ask you to start from where you had the fire chief and Chief Baker, and I apologize, who was the fourth one?
Chief Bonita.
Chief Bonita in the car with you, right? Because that was right around this time. You want to start from there and then let's talk about what each of the members of your command team did, because I think that's important, the breakdown of tasks, right, and responsibilities.
Sure. So initially, myself and Chief Goldstein were pretty much worried about the incident and figuring out what's going on here, bouncing ideas off each other. Do we remember this? Do we remember that? Do we remember this? He was also on the phone with PEPCO and one of the safety guys at PEPCO.
The fire chief.
Chief Goldstein, to get some more information. ECC had contacted them, but we were also talking to Pete Peterson, who's, I think he's the head safety guy for PEPCO. So we were talking to him as well, because one of the initial challenges we had is, okay, we obviously know exactly where this is, but who's responsible for that? Who owns that tower? Whose power lines are they? And how do we verify on an instance like this the condition of those lines and the safety of personnel to approach that tower? This is way out of our skill set. This isn't turning off a breaker in a house, pulling him. I mean, this is beyond it, you know. And I'm looking at it going, this isn't the guy in the line truck who shows up, right, and climbs up there and flicks one thing, and the power goes dead on the wire that's sitting on the car, and you're good to go. I mean, this is a major electrical transportation line. And also at this, and just to know how big an impact it has, you know, we're getting stories to the command post at this point also that 60% of Montgomery County is without power because of this one incident. So, you know, this is obviously a major thing. So he's working with him, and we're trying to identify, and it ends up that the lines are Pepco lines. The tower was installed and is maintained by a third-party commercial, is it AU? AUI Power, out of Elkton, Maryland, who's the contractor. And ultimately, the people from Elkton, Maryland, which is basically the Delaware line on 95, were the people who came to help us mitigate this, and were very, very valuable. So identify that, because from our point of view, we can't do anything. I'm not putting anyone on or near that tower without knowing the status of the electricity and making sure it's as safe as possible. I'm also worried about the tower collapsing. I'm worried about a lot of things, but the power is my big concern on this one. Because like I said, this is the type of voltage that'll reach out and touch you. You don't even have to be touching it. And if it's still working, we will kill somebody. So no one was getting near there. And that ended up being the frustrating part of the incident, right? The part that took so long to work out was the power situation. The actual rescue itself, as Ivan will talk about here in a little bit, was very quick. But the 6 hours before that, while we were trying to figure out the power situation, was the top part. So we're figuring that out. We're getting slowly getting information on who owns it, what we're going to have to do to turn off the power, all those things, and who's coming to help us. We were told that this company that works on this thing was coming from Elkton, Maryland. Holiday weekend, traffic in bad weather. We were given an ETA of somewhere between 2.5 and 3 hours before they could get personnel there. That actually ended up being pretty accurate. The first guy arrived somewhere between 2 and 2.5 hours into the incident. The equipment was a little bit longer than that. So we knew that we were going to have to deal with that. We're going to have a long-term incident. It started at 5. We're talking, 10, 11. We have no idea how long it's going to last. So we're starting to make plans for our thought processes about this extended incident. What are we going to need to do to support this incident? We also, as I alluded to earlier, we're seeing multiple agencies and multiple entities show up at this scene. So between us, the Montgomery County Police, the Maryland State Police, National Transportation Safety Board, FAA, the list goes on and on. Pepco, Verizon, Xfinity, AUI, members of the county executive staff were there. We had a state senator stop by. We had all kinds of people showing up. We now have to deal with this. So we have an incident that is way beyond just being able to manage from the car, right?
So you had, so you had Chief Goldstein working with you and making the necessary contacts, communications, and arrangements with Pepco and AUI. Mm-hmm. Chief Baker was talking to...
And that was pretty much his job the whole time. And then Chief Bonita, we kind of used here and there to do different things.
Okay. You had already spoken to your group supervisors, hazmat, technical rescue. Were you starting at this point to figure out, okay, this is what I want to do? Once we all know, or you knew, I should say, that you're not doing anything until the electric experts are telling you you can move. Right. So you're being held by them. That's probably not the right word to use. The incident is being controlled or the flow of the incident is being dictated by the electricity, right? Until that's
Right.
declared safe to operate. So at that point, while you're waiting for that to occur, were you developing a plan in your head at that point, or were you waiting to hear back from the TRT guys what their proposed plan was, the hazmat guys what their proposed plan was, the suppression group, EMS group?
Right. So I was waiting to hear back from all my different groups about what their plan was. Naturally, going through our head, we're trying to figure out some general scenarios because it all takes time to figure that out. And the problem was, for the major portion, the technical rescue portion, we still have a lot of unanswered questions. And we may talk about this a little bit later. We had a meeting later on with a huge number of participants where we had a lot of people with a lot of brain power in different specialties trying to figure out the safest way to do this based on what their concerns were at the time with the electricity, with the stability of the plane, with the stability of the tower itself, with the terrain, with the ability of individual equipment to get to certain areas and what the ratings were of those equipments and all these things coming in, and before we could actually come down to what our plan was moving forward. But at this point, an hour into the incident or 45 minutes into the incident, I'm kind of getting a general idea from my groups what they're perceiving as the issues that they're going to face going to be, what resources they need, whether I need to request additional resources. And I did. We requested additional TRT resources. We requested additional EMS resources. The fire suppression and the hazmat were pretty much taken care of. We didn't have really big concerns. In EMS, we had 2 patients, right? Plus anything that happened maybe to us, but we had a relatively small, this is not a mass casualty, and this was in an isolated area. So that was pretty much, and they were just kind of on standby, waiting for the orders of what to do, and waiting and waiting and waiting, right? Which is frustrating for everyone who's in the service because most of us like to go, right? We want to show up, we want to fix the problem, we want to do what we do, and that wasn't this type of call.
And everything you were doing was in order to prevent a mass casualty, really, right? Is this a good time to pass to Ivan?
Sure.
Talk about what his role was when he got there. I'd like to know what your mindset was from the time you got in your car to the time you got there, right? Because you were called in special.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Do you mind talking? What were you doing? Where were you?
I was up in a tree, and it was hunting season. I was up in a tree in the woods, and saw my phone go off, and that sounds crazy. And I still had to go pick my kids up. So I'm a hazmat battalion chief, kind of out of my wheelhouse. Wasn't even thinking about doing anything other than maybe some command post stuff if needed. So I went through my process to get home and had a conversation with Chief Hinkle and Chief McDonald via text just about what was going on and everything. Not thinking, I'm going to be honest, I was trying not to come to Montgomery County that evening. And that changed in an instant when the decision was made between Spec Ops of somebody probably needs to be at the command post to assist. I mean, Chief Ogren is fresh out of Spec Ops, right? So he's not far removed from the processes and everything else that go with that. But I'm the closest to come in off duty, so hopped in the truck. I didn't even turn my lights on. Stopped and got some coffee because I'm thinking I'm coming to man the command post, right? Like just to help out at a seat in there from the Spec Ops end, working with OEMHS, doing some stuff. And I guess as I got to had some conversations with Chief Hinkle, who was on duty in another capacity that evening. We were short working battalion chiefs, so he couldn't be pulled at the time. And again, we're just going for a command post role. Pretty much at that point, the tech rescue and the hazmat groups are pretty well versed in their operations and can handle a lot of stuff. So, not thinking anything of it, got to Brink Road and all the power's out. Just kind of that eerie feeling, the fog, the mist, hearing all these reports. I hadn't even seen a picture yet of what had happened, and that's when Chief Ogren called me to, hey, I need you to report to the south side. You're going to be the tech rescue group supervisor. Hit me up when you get there. And that was kind of eye-opening to me, right? Because I'm going in as a hazmat battalion chief. Tech rescue's not my forte by any means. I think, I don't want to sound crazy, but I think I can run a group or a division with some of the best of them. But when you throw me outside of that hazmat specialty or fire ground, it's different, right? Like, not my wheelhouse. So we had a conversation going over there, and that was kind of my assignment, to go to the south side, meet up with TRT resources, and let them manage this technical rescue, and I'll manage the group dealing with the command post and any other entities that we need to do, was kind of my thought process going into it, coming down the road.
All right, so there's so much we can talk about this for the next 3 days. So we have just under 45 minutes left. So what I think I want to do is I'm going to keep writing my questions down, but I'm going to refrain unless we have time at the end. If you guys could continue to tell the story from plan development to plan execution, and then we'll, if we have time, when we get to the end of that, we'll take the questions from the audience first, because they're probably more important. And then if we have more time, we'll take my questions, but we're probably going to run out of time. So at this point, I'm going to pass it to you guys and stay out of your way.
Yeah, there is one question, right? And
Sure.
I think it's more for you, Chief Ogren. Were you worried about what happens when we turn the power off to such a major line like that? And how do we deal with that as an organization or as command officers, right?
So, generally speaking, yes, we are concerned about with the impacts our incident is having outside of the actual incident. We run into this every day, right? Do we shut the road down or don't we shut the road down? Do we shut the railway down? Do we shut it, do we halt metro trains or Amtrak? We make these decisions every day, and there's impacts, right? Some of them are financial, some of them affect people's lives. My understanding is that there was one person who ended up actually dying from this incident because their oxygen machine ran out of electricity due to the blackout. So those thoughts are not inconsequential, and we did think about it. I was pretty confident at this point, given what I was hearing from outside of our incident, that the plane had handled turning off the power, that the power was actually off. But then you start worrying about the major power was off. Then you start worrying about backfeeding. You start worrying about static electricity. You start worrying about, will it turn back on? All these things are going through your head. So, but the reality is that there was no way to get up there without turning the power off. I mean, it just could not happen. So if we had to, and ultimately we did, we ultimately had to go to no different than turning off your house service, only it was a couple miles away. We go to a substation, lock out, tag out, and we turn the power off. And we know that it's off before they go up and bond and ground and do all the things they have to do. So we made that decision, but it's not without thinking about the consequences of what could go out. But, we're looking at two people's lives right here, plus the lives of the rescuers. So it wasn't a decision that we could go any other way.
Yeah, and that was relayed to me coming in too. Like, hey, we are waiting on the power company to handle the power, the electricity, and the static part of it before we make any operational moves. So that was kind of that was taken care of before I got there. As far as, that's the hazard, right? Like, we can't really operate until we get to that point. So that was relayed to me pretty good. I guess you want me to?
Yeah.
So I rolled up, I didn't get there until an hour and a half into the incident, right? By time of the dispatch time to when I pulled up on the south side, it was an hour and a half. There were some meetings or conversations going on at the command post. As I pulled up, I was directed to hook up with TRT resources, and I met the TRT team on the south side. They had positioned right in front of Tower 8, so they were close enough to do stuff. I'm walking up, like everybody says, it's out of a movie scene, right? You're looking up. I'm looking for a tail number. Is it 203? Whatever. Like, that's the plain knowledge that I have from working at 28 next to the airport. So plane stuff I dealt with, but it truly was a movie scene, and my immediate thought was high risk, right? Like, this is truly high risk. There's a plane hanging from a tower. And I come with the hazmat view of it, right? Like, hey, what's the research? What's the hot zones? What are going to be the tactical actions? And my goal was to meet up with the TRT folks, figure out what was currently in place, where we were headed, and then kind of go with that. Let them manage whatever we need for this rescue, and then handle the logistical side and the coordination side with command and other agencies coming in. TRT guys, one thing that struck me odd, right? We had some foot traffic going through underneath the lines, right? Like, is that the hot zone? I wasn't quite sure where we were with that. Hey, are more lines going to drop down? Is this tower going to collapse? So those are kind of my thoughts walking up. Was able to meet with those guys. They were staged appropriately, equipment getting set up, ready to go for what they perceived to be a rope evolution, based on what the TRT officers had told them, and then figure out the roster, right? Because all of our specialty teams have a roster that's working. And in my mind, I had heard that there's tower training in the past, right? Like, hey, there's high angle rescue, and then there's tower certification, through radio comms days, dealing with people that work on towers. Come to find out, I don't know that there's you're high angle. And there's specialized training, but no specific certification. But I didn't know that going in. So I wanted to find out who our roster is and who is capable, if we have to climb this thing, who is capable of doing that. Some time went by, got called to the command post, and was able to meet up with the command team. PEPCO was there at that point in time. AUI was not there. The supervisor from the power company's contractor that works on these, they were not there yet. So it was basically a conversation between fire rescue, police, and PEPCO at that point in time. Went through the objectives. Hey, here's Chief Ogren's objectives. Here are the hazards that we know about. Here's the hazards that we have to control. We're not doing we're not doing anything until the electric hazard's controlled. And then I was assigned as the tech rescue group supervisor to go work with the TRTOs to make sure we had a solid plan. We did have mutual aid resources there from DC at that point in time. Chief McCoy, the special ops counterpart for us down there, was called in, and he was tagged on to me as an extra set of eyes and just knowledge base to assist make this rescue, right? So my goal was to talk to our TRTOs, find out what plan they had ready to go. We had an hour and a half, so a lot of thoughts going through their mind, and kind of evaluate where we are, where the plan sits, wait for the AUI contractor to get there to what are they going to do, right? Is our plan out the door if they have to do something crazy that we can't be a part of? So we just we started working through stuff. Met up with Lieutenant Land, Lieutenant McGrain, and Captain Crawford. At that point in time, internally, they had figured out who their strong rope rescue guys are, right? Like, everybody's high angle trained, but they'd kind of come up with a plan of, hey, if and when we have to potentially climb at some point or go high, here are the players that are going to make that happen, based off the roster that was working today. So Lieutenant McGrain was in charge of the TRT at that point in time. He was actually the first arriving TRTO from the hazmat assignment, because Company 25 was due on the call for the hazmat assignment. So he ended up there first. Lieutenant Lamb was going to be part of the rescue team, and then Captain Crawford, who brings a huge knowledge base of TRT and USAR experience, was the TRT safety. And that was kind of the internal workings of the TRT team at that point in time, moving forward. And I know I'm a hazmat guy, right? I don't have a whole lot never climbed really high, so I was asking a lot of questions to them, which I think is valid, right? Like, who do you got? What do you got? Can we do this if we have to go up there once the power's secured? And Lieutenant McGrain and all three of them had great answers coming back to me, right? So we sat down the other day just to kind of re-hit it, and he was able to put our acre, assess, control, rescue, evacuate. He was kind of able to, he was doing that, maybe not exactly in that 100% order, but they were doing that prior to my arrival and had a lot of this stuff figured out. So the electricity, we've talked about that a lot, but what is energized? If we're going to put people on here, what is energized? What's the static concern? Chief Ogren found that out early on through conversations with PEPCO about the static concern. The height of the plane, right? So that was a question, and that really plays into TRT's evaluation of the call. So they have, go back to high school, right, the Pythagorean theory. They do their calculations. They have some rangefinders. They're able to pretty accurately figure out exactly how high up that thing was, which ended up being around 110 feet is what they calculated at the point in time. Tower 8 was there. It was on the south side. We had a conversation about if the time comes, can we use Tower 8 to get as high as possible? And then if rescuers have to go up to the plane, does it make them go, instead of going 110 feet, do they only have to go 20 feet? Can we get Tower 8 in a position? We thought we could. It would probably sink down in the mud. We'd beach it in there. One thing I don't think we talked about earlier on is we are so lucky that this thing happened right next to the roadway.
Yes.
Because had it been 2 or 3 towers back, we're walking, we're traversing land, maybe we're building a road with gravel, we're getting dump trucks and gravel to get into just so the power company can do their thing. Or I'm sorry, the power contractor, AUI, can do their thing. So, and then after they figured all that, what are their options for climbing and access to this plane? The tower stability, that was one of the concerns I had. I see damage to a tower, right, and a plane in it, dangling, for lack of a better term. I mean, it truly was dangling to an extent. So what's that tower stability? And one thing Logan and I talked about was not just above it, but also below it, right? Like what is that makeup of that tower? One thing hindsight 2020, we're thinking about it. So the high tension lines on those high voltage towers, they were still attached to that tower. So it was probably helping us that they hadn't been snapped, damaged, disconnected. There was a cell, he noted a cell tower in the middle of it, right? So if there was any leaning or something, that might have helped us as far as structural stability go. So again, these guys are thinking way outside of the box. And then how do we secure the plane? Because minus making a quick grab, like the electricity happens, and then the plane needs secured before they can do anything truly to affect a rescue once they get up there. And then we talked about the fuel and the medical status. I think it's crazy we're not injured, right? There was a lot of blood at the end of the incident that I can talk about later, but they were truly injured in there. But we didn't have eyes to. They can tell us all they want, but we don't have eyes to figure that out. You got anything to add to that part?
No, I mean, this is all good stuff that they're doing separate from the command post. I mean, we're getting feedback, we're in communication, but these are the experts working on it. And they're coming up with these scenarios. And I can tell you from the command post point of view, the last thing we wanted to do was put a body climbing that tower. I mean, that was the last resort. But we're spinning our wheels trying to figure out how are we going to get up to this thing, short of doing that. So.
And my knowledge base of our TRT guys, obviously I've dealt with them for a long time, and then the conversations I had with them, there's a lot of high-risk hazards occurring on this incident, but they had good answers for me, and I felt really comfortable if we got to that point, we would be able to affect a rescue once we got some of these other hazards controlled. We talked about the static. During all of this, right, other people were showing up. Pete Peterson from PEPCO is showing up. There is a huge conglomeration of entities from PEPCO, county police. Everybody's starting to gather, and now we're all gathering on Goshen Road in what was originally the hot zone. And I kind of lost scene control over that because people just kept piling in, right? Pepco must have had 28 electrical engineers, either there or on Zoom talking. AUI showed up. Their supervisor was first on the scene, and Mark was great to work with. We had once he got there, we had another command post meeting, but I also hooked him up with our TRT officers because the power crane company and our TRT officers, they were going to be the integral piece that made this happen. AUI had to do their thing, we had to do our thing, and we had to kind of marry together to make that happen.
You're talking about the execution of the plan.
Correct.
So again, in the spirit of time, do you want to talk about what the plan was?
Yeah, so all of the electrical lines needed to be individually grounded. Their discussion with me originally was, if this was nice weather, we'd have a helicopter crew here and working off of it, because that's how they work on those power lines a lot of times in the repair and just normal maintenance world. That wasn't an option that night because of the weather. So unbeknownst to us, I don't know when you knew it, but they had bucket trucks, basically. Anybody that's heard of a Bronto Skylift, right? It's an articulating aerial ladder. So they had a bucket version of that they use routinely to do work on things like this. So they can go up, articulate, bucket can move around. So they were coming at some point. I don't know. They were en route before I got there. So from Elkton, they were on their way down. So I'm guessing AUI just made that call based on.
We talked about it initially, but yeah, they made the call that was some of the equipment they were bringing with them.
So they're just headed down the road. So we knew that they were coming. We knew that was going to be a huge piece of our plan. We would love to get up there without having to climb. So Mark and Logan and Mikey Crawford and John Land all had that conversation with Mark, and they had a nice little group huddle to kind of figure that out. The big player in this was Pepco. How were they going to? We couldn't do anything until they shut that down. And I'm telling you, when there was 30 people on a Zoom call in the middle of Goshen Road, it was at least 30 trying to figure out what goes where, this, that, all this stuff. And like, here we are, firefighters, just twiddling our thumbs like, come on, guys, like, figure it out. But there is a lot to the back end that they needed to do, which gave us time. So, essence of time, the plan was to make sure that we had to get up there, or how we were going to get up there. Plan A was to use the bucket truck.
Did you say how high the capability was?
185 feet is what
Okay.
straight up is what they were capable of. So well within the reach. We got Tower 8 out of there. We didn't need them there anymore at that point in time. This was strictly a bucket truck operation, and they were bringing two. So we had a primary and a secondary to assist. So they were going to go up, ground. They were going to get permission to ground from Pepco. I think that's the big piece. They needed permission from Pepco to go up there and actually ground. Then they had to ground each section of line, which was at least 4 that they had to go to. Once that was completed, they were coming back down. They were going to pick up the designated technical rescue leader and a technical rescue paramedic. So Lieutenant Land and Master Firefighter Paramedic Marlowe were the 2 primary rescuers. And then we had Reed and I forget who else. I don't have my paper in front of me. They were the backup. So we had primary and backup within our team to go up. Once grounded, they were going to come down. They were going to go up together. Fire Rescue TRT was going to take harnesses, victim harnesses, basic rigging, and some basic medical equipment to get eyes on the patients in the plane. And then we have all of that there, and AUI was going to work on rigging the plane to the tower. Part of the unknowns early on were can they even attach the plane or rig it to the tower? It was an unknown because we couldn't until they got eyes on the damage up there.
Let me stop you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a quick question. So was Chief Baker telling the occupants of the plane what was happening as this is going on so they don't jump out of the plane and try and get in the basket?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we made special calls at that point to say, look, you're going to be seeing some people. We're starting to work this plan. There's going to be people within a few feet of you probably pretty shortly. but they're not coming to get you
Stay
yet.
there.
This is what we're doing. Sit tight. We got to make this safe. We are coming for you, but don't go climbing out of the plane or do anything crazy. Wait for us to come up to you. You're going to hear noises. There's going to be people up there. Just hang tight. This is almost over.
It was the window rescue at a building fire, right?
Sure.
Like, you don't want them jumping onto your bucket truck
Yep.
and screwing up your plant. So that was kind of the thought that we had.
We got a question.
Yeah, so from the chat here, any thoughts on using the tower drone inspection video to view occupants prior to Pepco bucket truck arrival for planning and info gathering?
So
Go ahead.
So drone crossed my mind for a second because of the unknown wire hazards and structural stability. I did not want anything flying close to where the patients were or where the plane was into the tower.
Good question.
Hindsight 2020, we may have been able to get some oversight further away, but we didn't want anything near the tower that would affect the rescue operation.
There also was a problem with, and it's hard to see from some of these pictures, there's one earlier that shows the fog, but the fog kept coming in and out, and there were times where you couldn't see the plane from the ground because the fog got so low. So putting anything in, above, or around that was a little bit of a concern, and how much of a great view you would have with the lights shining up and all these things. They were considered, but I was more worried about anything we do, and that's a pretty good picture right there with the fog. So I was more worried about anything we doing affecting the plane. I mean, we put up a no-fly zone for 2 miles around, which was a royal pain to get done, but we finally got it done. Because I didn't need some news aircraft coming across and blowing down on the plane and blowing it off the tower or something along those lines. So we were very cautious when we approached this plane.
All right, again, and Tom, I'm going to give it back to you, but I do have a question for both of you. So at some point in time, you had to present the plan to the incident commander, and the incident commander had to say, yes.
Yes.
Okay, so was that an easy conversation to have?
So I think our conversation about it was easy. So Pepco required a safety brief also. In the industry world, nobody's doing anything until we have a safety brief, right? So we gathered all the supervisors from Pepco, AUI, us, told Chief Ogren and the command staff. Everybody came down, county police, right? Lighting. Everybody wanted lighting on these towers, and our county police counterparts. Chief McDonald was working through OEMHS and county police ESU, and they were able to bring county police light trailers there until another contractor to get there. So that happened kind of early on. All of those entities, we had basically a safety brief and a operational briefing all at the same time. I took the lead on that. TRT was standing right next to me. We presented our plan. We presented the hazards, the objectives. Pepco and AUI gave their input on anything outside of that. And then it was basically approval from the incident commander at that point, which we got. I don't think you had any major questions at that point in time. It was, believe it or not, it was a pretty intricate plan that we went over in a very brief time, but we were still waiting on that confirmation of power down.
Okay, so from the time of your brief to the time that power went down, how much time was that?
At that point, I think, I don't have my notes in front of me for that. I want to say it was within 30.
Okay, so it was quick.
It was quick.
Yeah,
It was quick.
It was
By
in
that
30.
time, it was quick, yeah.
Okay, so who gave the final green light? Would that have been you after you talked to everybody?
Technically, it was me. So we had a meeting in the command bus with all the people, and we had talked about what we were thinking about doing, and we had electrical engineers, and we had mechanical engineers, and we had the AUI people, the Pepco people, the FAA people, that, all talking about this stuff. And so by the time we got to that briefing and final thumbs up, we pretty much had our plan. We pretty much had a go-ahead. It was just going through the steps at that point of briefing out the people. TRT had bought into it. Pepco had bought into it. Everyone was on the same wavelength. It was just like, okay, now we're going.
We did have it was a good wrench thrown into it later on. So plan was approved. We started moving. The bad wrench, Pepco needed to power up another line to get electric to the rest of the county, right? So they were still working on that in the background. And so we had to clear out for a minute so they could do that because they didn't want the power to surge and drop another line. So they had us clear that. They were able to do that relatively quickly, and actually get power back to the rest of the county prior to us going up. The good wrench was we were sitting there, and there was, again, high risk. There was a lot of concerns from AUI, Mark, their supervisor, Pepco, and me, and command staff. When the AUI comes up and says, hey, if this thing drops, go do your thing. And I'm like, whoa, time out. I'm cool with our folks doing their thing, but I need one of you all to tell me where we can do our thing safely to affect anything. And that's where Logan and him married at the hip was huge, because he had communications with his folks. Logan had communications with me and his folks, and it worked really well. But when you hear that, it's like,
Yeah.
that's scary to an extent. So the really good wrench that was thrown in.
Chief Browning, I have a question, and it's my question, right? How did our safety office play into this? How did our safety officer
So
play into it?
safety officer was Paul Neal, Captain Neal. He was integral to the operation. He was with, Crawford was TRT safety, and incident safety was Captain Neal. They worked together very well, and I think Captain Neal was with me a majority of the time. Sometimes he would go back to the command post with things, but he was integral to the entire operation. A really good set of eyes. He really helped us when we had to clear out because everybody was congregating, right? It's like, stop. If you are not vital to this operation, get out. Pepco, I need your critical people here. Get everybody else out. We do not want them here. And he was he did that. He was big with the hazard zones, right? So we reinstituted some hazard zones with tape. And going that. So yes, our safety office was huge. I'm sorry, I forgot that earlier. It was huge in getting buy-in on the plan, right? Because we needed not just TRT safety and command, we needed our incident safety officer buy-in too. And the Pepco safety officer.
Right.
Pepco sent their own safety officer. And at one point, there was AUI and Pepco guys looking at the tower, and he literally ran up and was like, no, nobody around this tower. It could fall, right? And we're like, whoa, okay, well. But we reined him in pretty quick, and we had really good conversations between all the safety components to, hey, this is our plan. This is the best plan to go up there with those. So AUI in the bucket, well, crane operator, bucket operator, 2 TRT guys, rig the plane. Other AUI bucket was going to assist rigging on the backside. And as soon as that's done, they get eyes on the patient, and they evaluate
As soon as
whether,
what's done.
as soon as it's rigged to the tower, so the plane's not going to move.
And who's making the call that we're happy that the plane's not going to move? Is that the TRT guys?
So honestly, it was AUI making that final call,
Okay.
talking to the TRT folks up in the bucket.
Okay.
So, but in our planning effort, that was AUI's focus. They were the ones that were securing the plane.
Oh, okay.
And then we were responsible. They didn't want anything to do with the patients, like, because we asked him. Logan asked him, was like, "Hey, if your guys are up there grounding, like, can you go grab?" He's like, "We cannot. We're not trained medically. If it happened to be a quick rescue or something, they didn't want their tower buckets to be in the way of any rope systems or other high angle stuff that would negate how the bucket operates. Right? It basically stopped them from getting away if something went bad."
And Chief Browning, because a question just came in, when you're talking about AUI, that is the structural engineering safety guy from AUI, correct?
Yeah, so there was multiple AUI folks there. They had one supervisor that was responsible for all of their people, and he was getting input on their side.
Yeah, because so the question was, when was the tower structural engineer brought into console?
The tower structural engineer.
And it was there one, right?
So we had
Pepco
in Pepco had, so there was 2 groups there, right? So there was Pepco and AUI. So AUI actually, and these guys, some of the guys who were there doing the rescue actually built this tower. So they're the ones who built it, they maintain it, and there's Pepco. Now in the meeting we had when we were developing the plan or coming up with the plan in the command post, asking some of the hard questions when we had a mechanical engineer from Pepco was in that meeting, and he was the one who was advising us on the structural integrity of that tower. He was actually surprised it was still standing. His opinion is the only thing that kept that tower from falling was the Verizon cell tower that was in the center of it. If it had hit any of the other towers, it probably would have come down. If that's true or not, we don't know. That's speculation, right? So he was there along with their electrical engineer, along with the guys who actually built the tower, and they were discussing all the stuff that goes along with the tower and the safety on the tower.
All right, so at this point, we're gonna not entertain any more questions to the end. And if we don't get to them, can we make a commitment to answer them via email somehow? Okay. So one question from me, because I'm the moderator. What time did we start pulling the lever to send those guys up in the bucket?
I left those notes in the
Then
car.
don't worry about it, 'cause I want-
11, it was 11:52.
So between 6.5 and 8 hours later.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So I want you to be able to tell the rest of your story, and then I want you to be able to finish it off as the incident commander, and then we'll see what happens from there. So go ahead.
So Plan A, AUI crane guy, 2 bucket operators. The NTSB had called a plane recovery specialist because they knew 2 people were trapped in the plane and asked them to come to the scene. There's a whole background with that, but long story short, they got there. That guy got there. I thought he was an AUI guy, but he was a plane recovery company, and he was able to interject with AUI's supervisor, and he knew that exact type of plane. He knew where to rig it, and he was able to advise them on, your plan's good, maybe adjust here or whatever. So that conversation happened, which made us feel a lot better about the rigging operation that was going to occur for the plane to the tower itself. And there were still questions about the tower as they got up there, but nobody knew until we got eyes on it. So 1 AUI guy in the bucket, 2 TRT members. Other bucket was operating on the backside. That was Plan A, go up, rig the plane to the tower, evaluate the patients. If we can get them out at that point in time, they have the equipment with them to do a quick patient harness to get them out. If they need more equipment, we have the additional TRT personnel on the ground there, ready to assist with what is needed. Plan B, if that wasn't going to work because of whatever structural stability of the tower once they got up there, Plan B was to use the bucket. It's got a 1,000-pound capacity, and use it as basically as a high directional and do a pickoff. One of the concerns was the plane of crossing into the plane, right? Like, that's putting people in the hazard zone, and we got to bring those patients out of that plane also through that. So if there's any movement at all, that could be a concern. So we went with Plan A. We had a couple other brief stops to confirm, hey, this is the best plan, right? And yes, this is the plan, best plan. This is the plan we're going to go with. And basically, Lieutenant McGrain had the radio at that point to work with his folks to effect it. I was standing there, and just, they're working in a high-risk environment. I could see what was going on. There was questions I kind of like, hey, are they talking to the patient? But I'm not stopping them. I don't know what they're doing in that bucket, so I'm not stopping them in the middle of a high-risk operation. They're very well trained. They know what they're doing. They're taking care of the right things. I'll get the information when I can, or we'll pull a stop button if something really looks or sounds bad. They were able to get the harnesses into the patients, help them get them around, and then they pulled them out one by one. They pulled the passenger out first, perception that that patient was more injured, brought them down, transferred to an ambulance crew that was awaiting, went back up, did the same thing for the other victim, and got them down, transported to another EMS unit, and that was the rescue in the end. It was 20 minutes.
That's what I was going to ask you. From the time you started lifting those guys up to the time.
It was about 20 minutes from
total?
The rescue operation was about 20 minutes after.
Once the plane was secured.
Wow. And you brought the first victim down. We obviously didn't leave anyone up there with the second victim. Was he?
So the other tower bucket was there, and they were kind of overwatched. They weren't in a good position to be like in their face, like, hey, how you doing? Anything changed? But they were there to keep an eye on things. And
Did we have TRT personnel in that bucket as well?
no, our focus was in the primary bucket going up.
Did we have any fire and rescue personnel in the?
No, that was an AUI operation that was going on the backside
Got it.
there.
Okay. Did you receive any feedback from the rescuers when they landed with the first victim?
Lieutenant McGrain did, and it was plane seemed secure, right? Like the plan was working.
Good.
And they need to go back up and do the same thing with the second victim and get them out. And they were able to accomplish that. Again, the second one was much easier to get out because of less injuries.
Okay, so I have a few more things, but I don't want to take the opportunity from people in the field. Has anything come in?
Yeah, there's two. One was Verizon on generator power, and was that an issue?
So it was.
Yes.
And actually, some guy in a Verizon hat walked down the street, said, "Hey, I'm here. I was told to come here. I'm from Verizon." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't need you. Go back up to the command post and hook up with the folks at the command post, and they'll get you involved when they need to get you involved." Well, once he got back to the command post, I think you probably had the conversation with him. Hey, there's a Verizon generator down there. Do you want me to shut it off? Oh.
You don't know.
Can you send him back down here, right? Or
Yeah.
hey, I'm sending him back down here. So yes, that was somebody I thought had no reason for being there in our hot zone. Had a very valid reason, and I wish he would have. I told him after the fact. I was like, I wish you would have said that when you're standing here. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry," but different view on things.
They
right?
don't speak fire department.
not fire rescue. Like, hey, I need to
Next
shut
time,
that
lead
down.
off with
They speak cellular technology, not fire department, right?
So we did get. Luckily, that happened before we went up in the bucket, and he was able to secure that, and we added that to the plan.
Yes, and then there's one more. Given the no-fly zone establishment, was there any additional action that had to occur given the proximity to the air park?
So when we initially arrived there, Captain Foz was on, I don't know if he actually came on the engine company or if he came on the ASMAT. But he showed up there, and Company 28 has a aircraft radio. So he was monitoring that for us, and we were one of the groups of people that was on the scene was representatives from the airport. So yeah, by creating that no-fly zone, we effectively shut down that airport. Now, in doing some research afterwards and seeing some of the stuff going on, that airport at the time of the incident was below the minimums, and no one should be flying to that airport anyway. But by us doing that, coordinating with them, we did shut down that airport, and we were monitoring they were monitoring the air traffic radio.
And then one that just came in, right? Is there anything that both of you, right, would have done differently, hindsight?
Hey, that's my question.
It's just, sorry, somebody beat you to it.
Go ahead.
So I've debated a lot of things in hindsight, and there's probably are some things I would do different. I initially signed different channels to a couple of my groups, and while initially that was very easy to monitor, there were times when it became hard to monitor the channels. I don't know that they were all used, so I don't know that. There's a lot. This incident, along with the incident we're going to talk about next week or so, there are incidents that grow beyond the fire department. I just did a quick count, and I think by my count, I had 19 individual organizations that were represented on the scene of this call, both non-governmental and governmental, that had to be dealt with and controlled. And this is definitely where you need to come in, and we need to kind of separate operations from the total incident, and the total incident control has to go through and monitor all that. So other than that, I don't know that I could have done much differently. I mean, you second guess a lot of stuff when you do these calls, but given the parameters, a lot of the incident was dictated to me. I didn't have a lot of choices in a lot of the stuff. So I can't come up with anything else specific that I might do differently.
All right, so we have about 8 minutes left. and I feel like I rushed you guys. So, Dan, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, inject, offer up, things we should have covered that we didn't in the last 90 minutes? Words of wisdom? This was the call of a career, right? You know, since I've been around, there's been a few of those, right? There's been the River Road water main break, the Montgomery Mall parking garage, the plane this is one of those, the plane across the street, right? So things that we can learn from you guys that were there to take with us to pass down to the younger guys, or if we have to experience something like this, hey, what happened on the last one, you know?
Yeah, so I think one big thing I learned or have learned from incidents like this one is that we're now operating on these incidents on a level or where it's not just the fire department, right? So like I said, there was 19 individual groups there. Some of them had really no reason to be there, and some of them had a very significant reason to be there. This is a rescue that could we have accomplished without some of these people? Maybe. But a lot of this rescue and a lot of the stuff that got done by people other than fire department people. And that's just the nature of the business we're in, right? We're not experts on everything. We have to rely on our non-fire department counterparts, both within the government and outside the government, to assist us on these. And we have to have some faith. And as command officers, we have to get away from the mindset that we can control everything from the front seat of that car, right? This was way beyond me as an individual to control this incident, right? I can control parts of it, and my command team in the car, the 3 or 4 of us sitting in that car, can control a lot. But then we got a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of people who played key roles in this we haven't even talked about. I mean, Chief McDonald was there. Chief Bailey was there. We had people from OEMHS who were there helping us. I mean, we had so many people who were helping bring this whole package together. And it's not something that the battalion chief or even the duty chief or someone in that command team can handle all on their own. We have to work in these teams, and we have to bring in the experts, and we have to use their knowledge and expertise. When we're sitting in that bus with the power company, the contractor, us, the police, OEMHS, FAA, not one person had ever seen anything like this.
And the research that was going on, we could not find a similar incident to base anything off of.
The call of a career, right?
So the multiple agencies, right? Communication is always a key, but with multiple agencies involved, is the buy-in to a decision-making team difficult to get, or was everybody, with the Pepco guys, they had a plan, and they're experts in Pepco, in energy, and the Verizon guy, but at some point, they have to bring their plan to the command team, I guess. Is that difficult to?
In this case, it was not. Every meeting we had with these people, I thought went very, very well. And we had our concerns, we had our questions, we had the people who we looked to for answers. And then we explained what we kind of wanted to do and what we needed to accomplish that. And everyone kind of came together and said, yeah, we think that'll work. And we came up with a plan that ultimately ended up being executed and went off very well. So, but in this particular case, that unified command, or the meeting between all the agencies involved, went very well. There were no issues there. There was no one saying, no, you can't. I mean, yeah, there were people who had concerns, right? No, you really don't want to do this if you don't have to, because that tower may fall. Or no, you have to wait until this power gets turned off, or, giving us processes. But that's what they're there for, right? That's why we had them there, is to put their expertise. And it's not something that, the command officer in the front of the buggy is going to be able to figure all out on his own or her own.
Any final words?
Yeah, to build off that real quick, designating who's going to speak for those other entities too, right? I knew Mark from AUI was making whatever his final decision was on the AUI. That's who I was getting it from. On the Pepco side, Pete Peterson was one of them, but he even had a supervisor there specific to that. Like that was the point of contact for Pepco. So being able to designate at the command level, being able to designate those, so I know who I get my answers from on their operations. Like I don't want lineman A telling me one thing and then the big boss telling me another. So I'm going to you, you figure it out, and you let me know. So that happened. Relationships matter. I just met Pete Peterson 2 weeks prior to that at a National Fire Academy event, and we had some FaceTime prior, but a lot of, at the command level, that FaceTime and relationships ahead of the incident, like you can't say enough about it. It just means so much. And then the only thing on the tactical level, right? Like, be ready to work outside of your comfort zone, wheelhouse. You're going to have to do that at some point. But trust your people, right? Like I had no doubt in my mind that Montgomery County Fire Rescue TRT, once we developed the plan, was capable of doing that, and I was okay with letting them doing that, and they came in with a good plan. So trusting those guys and their expertise helped me relay that to the command bus to make the plan happen.
I hate to cut you guys off because, like I said an hour and a half ago, we could talk about this for the next 3 days. It's awesome stuff that you guys pull off. I'm going to keep asking questions when we're done for days to come. To that end, I'm going to pass it off to Chief Gibson. And
Not only you, but I think people that are viewing now that have additional questions.
absolutely. So how do you want to handle it? Do you want them sent to you and you
Yes.
can farm them out?
Yeah, so
I want you addressed
there
up
are
there.
a couple questions that came in here towards the end. We're going to address those via email, probably send it to you guys to hopefully
Sure.
get to these boys and girls. But listen, thank you guys. There were a lot of really tough questions, right? This was a great discussion. I learned a ton just sitting here, listening to you guys. So much appreciated. So with that, that concludes this episode. Be on the lookout. The next episode will be from the Challenges in the Streets from the Command Lab on January 19th, where we will be talking about the acquired structure program that the Training Academy has put on, along with some lithium-ion battery, which Chief Browning has been part of, wrapping up some of that stuff. Right? Yeah, we'll get you a frequent flyer card here in a minute.
Wants a red sweatshirt.
Yeah, be Brady and something.
So January 24th, we will have from the command post / Boss Talk, another Glenmont Circle style episode where we will have command officers and company officers discussing the gas explosion that occurred in Gaithersburg. So that'll be on the 24th. Final shout out, right? Chief Davis is not able to be here with us today, but a shout out to the goldfish that's been keeping him company. I believe his name was Lamar.
Lamar, isn't it?
Lamar,
Yeah.
right? Lamar. So shout out to the goldfish that's been staying and keeping Chief Davis company. So until the next time, we will see you on here.